Okay, by way of kicking it off, kia ora, greetings, g'day. My name's Brian Flaherty. I'm Data Services Product Manager here at NeSI, and I'll be hosting the session today on data transfer service. A number of my colleagues are also in on the webinar as well, and will be helping me to answer any questions during the session. So just an outline of some housekeeping first. So please mute your audio if you're not speaking or asking a question. If you have any quick question, there is a shared Google Doc that you can type a question in at any time, and someone here from NeSI will answer that for you. Any longer questions, probably best to hold till the Q&A at the end, and then unmute your speakers. This webinar and slides and transcript will be loaded up onto our website afterwards, so you don't have to hurriedly scribble any notes if there's anything of value to you. In terms of what we'll cover today, I'll probably do about 10 minutes of an overview of the service, do a demo, talk briefly about how to get help, and then go over to a Q&A session. We can ask any questions you'd like. So I'll kick straight in then around the service overview of the NeSI data transfer service, what it is and why we're promoting it today. The big picture really is it's not about a data transfer or data transfer nodes or new nodes or bits of software. It's really around collaborating with researchers anywhere around the globe to share your research via a dedicated science network. And we are achieving that, or endeavouring to achieve that, through working with two partners. The first of those partners is Globus. A little bit of background: the Globus Alliance is an international association founded at the University of Chicago and the Argonne National Laboratory to build services and infrastructure around grid computing. And the globus.org is a web-based service that solves a lot of those challenges around moving large volumes of data between systems. So you can see from the slide here, there's 12,000 active endpoints, 1,000 connected institutions, 500 terabytes of data transferred a day. So it is a global company with a global reach. We have been working with Globus since 2014 to offering a high-speed option around transferring data distributed nationally and internationally. Last year, it's probably to put it into context, NeSI reviewed our data transfer offering and have now implementing and rolling out a new and improved service designed for use with our new national HPC platforms of Maui and Mahuika. Just briefly, how does it work? So your data is transferred between its source and its destination systems, while Globus works in the background to tune performance, maintain security, and monitor progress and validate the correctness. So it's reliant on data transferred between endpoints. And those endpoints are nothing more than operating systems, whatever, Windows, Linux, that have the Globus endpoint software installed on them. They can be a personal endpoint or a server endpoint. The NeSI node or endpoint is a server endpoint, and it's, as I mentioned, it's configured to work with our high performance computing, the file systems. The data doesn't. It was worth noting that data doesn't ever transfer via Globus. It transfers directly between the two endpoints, and Globus just manages that process through, and you submit a request via a web app, and Globus notifies you once the transfer is complete. If your institution doesn't have its own endpoint, you can set up a personal endpoint, which we'll talk a little bit about later to transfer data from a known endpoint to your own personal computer, or alternatively, if we can look to work with your institution to set up an endpoint at your institution. So a summary around the data transfer, suitable for small and large volumes of data. The data is transferred in New Zealand over the RIANS network, which as RIANS promoted is 1,000 times faster than standard DSL. It supports workflows, so it doesn't just have to be via the Globus web app. The scripted APIs are available. Globus has a Python SDK available. You can script a workflow to transfer data from external sources, or internally you can generate data and then script a workflow that transfers that elsewhere. And the last point there, that you can track your transfer as it's happening to see how the transfer is going. Just a little promo then for RIANS, that one of our most best uses of RIANS in the last little while, in the last year, has been when we were transferring to the new HPC platform. We had to transfer from the PAN cluster in Auckland down to the new platforms at NeSI and Wellington, and had a new RIANS record of 19 gigs transferred in a day. So it's not just the Globus application that we're working with. It is both Globus and the real value of transferring via the RIANS network in New Zealand. Some early adoptees, it's worth noting that the Deep South Challenge, the Earth System modelling projects, been early adopters at transferring and sharing their large climate modelling data sets. We're also in discussion with Genomics Aotearoa about broader issues really around data management and custodianship and access to Māori and other sensitive genomics data using looking to use the Globus platform, so wider than just the Globus transfer service. So how to get started? For those who haven't before, you need three things if you're wanting to transfer data to and from the NeSI platforms. First of all, you need a Globus account. We'll go through how to set one up. You need an active NeSI account. And you need to have a project in NeSI, so you need to be using a project using HPC Mauika or Maui. If you're not currently a NeSI user and you're able to use our project application on the NeSI website to request in a project proposal there to request a project, and that'll be reviewed and you'll be informed of the outcome of that. So those four things needed. Well, the fourth one obviously being that you need somewhere to transfer that data to, whether it's your own institution's endpoint or whether it's a personal endpoint that you have set up. Information about setting that up is available from NeSI support website. The documentation is available there about how to get a Globus ID, about how to set things up, about personal endpoints, and so on, and the transfer service. One thing to note is that once you do have access and set up Globus and have access to your to the NeSI endpoint and the NeSI file system, where you get access to is not every part of your file system that you have access to directly. So on the NeSI cluster, you have access to your home directory, you have access to a no backups directory, but what you don't have access to via the Globus application is to your projects directory. I think someone had asked about that. Jeffrey had asked about that in a question beforehand, whether they could get access directly to the project directory. The reason at this point is no, is a security. Sorry, I'm just picking up a couple of messages there. The recommended place to use for the data transfer is from your no backup project directory. So the one thing to note about the no backups is file system. It's not persistent and it won't be there forever, but it has a large quota for every project. So the recommended process is to move your files from your project directory into the no backup directory for the files transfer process. Data transfer nodes in New Zealand, 4 of those currently, as well as our NeSI Wellington node. There is one at Otago, Auckland University have one, and Ag Research as well. In the support doc, there is contacts if you are a member of that organisation or have rights to access those endpoints, who you contact in order to get permissions to authenticate on those. And the last point around that is, as I mentioned, if your institution doesn't have an endpoint and you would like to set one up, we can offer support in helping set up a DTN, a data transfer node at your institution. So just please contact us if you're interested in having that conversation. Right, so we'll go to, I'll do a demo then. Let me just jump across to demo here. The first part of the demo will be a little bit canned and just in that setting up an account. I already have an account and I already have a couple actually. So I'll just run you quickly through the process of how you set up a Globus ID or set up an account with Globus. The place to start is that URL there, transfer.nesi.org.nz, which will take you once you've have an account to a NeSI customized Globus web app for managing your data transfers. If you don't want to use our customized version, you can go directly to globus.org and log in there as an alternative. So if you go to that transfer.nesi URL, and if you haven't already logged in, you'll be asked to log in. If this is your first time, you can click on continue, and you'll be asked to put in a username. At the top here, you can instead sign up for a Globus ID. Just going back for a moment, there are 3 ways that you can authenticate. You can create a Globus ID, you can authenticate, sign in with Google, or with your ORCID ID. Hopefully most of you researchers do have an ORCID. Just for the demo today, I'm going to show you how to set up a Globus ID, but you can use either of the other 2 to authenticate. So with the Globus ID, in order to sign up, you'll be asked to fill out a form, create a username, password, and your organization. Once you've filled out the form, you'll be sent an email with a verification code that you take back to the Globus web page, add your verification code. You can see up here, I've set up an ID, which is brianf@globusid.org. Put in my verification code, and I've successfully logged into Globus. At this point, you'll note there's a link to existing account. If you are setting up a Globus ID and you've previously had a Google ID or vice versa, you need to, if you have used more than one way of authenticating an identity, then you need to link those accounts together so that Globus can keep track of your transfers and the work that you do with the app. So once we've continued, Globus wants to be able to do a few things with us. Their identities manage groups. We allow Globus to do that. So then we can come on to start transferring some data. So the place where we'll land is the Globus file manager and the web app. And let me just jump through to my live demo at this point. And I think I will yeah, so I'm at the Globus, the NeSI branded file manager now. I've already logged in. If I go back to my PowerPoint slide, the first time you go to log in, if you click on the collections here, you can then do a search for a particular, the endpoint that you want to be using, connecting to. And in my live demo, if I clicked in here, I had already just done a search for NeSI and that endpoint. And the third option there is the NeSI Wellington DTN. So I'd selected that DTN. If it's the first time that you are connecting to the NeSI DTN, you'll be asked to authenticate as you're asked to authenticate to any of the managed endpoints DTNs. So our NeSI Wellington one, your username and password there are those the same that you use when you are logging into Mahawika or Maui. Use the same username and password there to authenticate into the our DTN. Having done that, the place that you land is by default in your home directory that I mentioned. You have access to your home directory and to your no backups directory. So so we're looking on the left hand of the two panes here. I'm in the Wellington DTN and the path there is my home directory. I can go up a folder level. As you see, there's a home, there is a NeSI directory and no backups in there. So if I browse into the no backups directory, I will get, hopefully it won't take too long, but I'll get a list of all of the projects, the no backup directories, all of the projects. Hopefully that's not going to time out on me. Alternatively, I could have just typed my my path straight in here. Let's just see if it's going to, okay, I'll refresh that again. See if it'll do it for me this next time. Go up just to show you the no backup directories. It's going to work for me this time. Yeah, so here they all are here. I have a project which is a, where are we, NeSI. A project that I have access to, 2659. 2659. So this is a project directory that I have access to. And there are my files in there that I've already put some in. Now, so that is my, so I've access now into my no projects directory. Where I want to transfer files to, in this example, I've already set it up here, but if I'm looking for Auckland, there's University of Auckland DTN. I have access to a test folder in there. Let's just go back into my CAN demo here. The first time that I authenticate into the Auckland DTN, again, as you see, I'd be asked for my username and password for access to the Auckland DTN. If you don't already have access, as I mentioned earlier, on the support page is a list of contacts to request access to a particular DTN. So to our live demo here, I've got access to this folder on the University of Auckland node, and I can transfer one or collection of files. So let me just select one here. I can then click on Start and start the transfer process. As you can see here, transfer has been submitted. I can check on my activity, and the transfer started of that file from the University of Auckland DTN to the NeSI Wellington DTN. I think it was about 500 megs. When the transfer is finished, I should be notified. I can also, if I want to, rather than just a single file, you can select groups of files to transfer. Let's see that activity now. So the transfer has been completed. If I go back to my file manager and refresh my list, see that that file there is across now in my has been transferred to from Auckland to the NeSI platform down in Wellington. Okay, how are we doing for time? I have to, right. Maybe the next, let's just go back to my CAN demo again. Talk just briefly about personal endpoints. If you want to transfer files to and from your own desktop, whether that's your laptop or your desktop inside your organization, you can set up a personal endpoint. From the Globus, from the support, NeSI support, you can find the information on the Globus site about how to install personal Connect server on your own device, your laptop, your PC. And there's that for Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and so on. Once you have installed, here, if you can see, I've installed it on my personal laptop. I've installed an endpoint, and I've selected the directories that I want available in that endpoint. I'm then able to transfer files from that endpoint to and from a managed endpoint such as the NeSI DTN. Worth noting, there is no cost to have to set up and have a personal endpoint and to use the NeSI data transfer service. If your organization wants to set up an endpoint, we can help with that, and there is a subscription cost. It is not large. But as a personal, an individual user of the data transfer network, there is no cost. One thing to note, though, if you do want other people to access your personal endpoint, you need to have a little bit greater access. So you need to have been subscribed to something called Globus Plus. NeSI has a Globus Plus subscription that we can pass on to anybody who requests it. So if we click on Globus Plus here, you can see with this account, I don't already have Globus Plus. I can, sorry, I should have mentioned I found this under my account and the NeSI on the Globus web app. I can click on Add Globus Plus Sponsor. When I do that, there's a whole list of Globus Plus sponsors globally. The one that we need to select is a New Zealand eScience infrastructure. So the NeSI one, the NeSI Globus Plus is the one that you want to request access to. So if you select that, that will send a request to NeSI that you want to become a Globus Plus member. Once that your subscription is set up, you will be given an email saying that you have a Globus Plus access. Right, last thing I want to mention very, very briefly, just in finishing, is as well as transferring data, you can share data. So here on the Wellington and the NeSI DTN, I have a directory called Annual Reviews. You'll notice here, one of the menu options is to share. I can share that directory with any other individual. So if I select the path that I want is my Annual Reviews directory, I can create a description of it, a share name, and create what's called a share. At that point, the share has been created. I have read and write access to it, and I can add permission for anyone else to access that share or that directory. I've just sent it a request to my an email to myself saying I'm sharing the folder with you. You can put in someone's email address you want to share that folder with, and with an email message, and add their permissions. So you see in my sharing of my Annual Reviews folder now, as well as myself, there is this person B.Flaherty who has read access but not write access. And the key here is that Brian Flaherty, myself, I have admin rights, but the person I'm sharing with doesn't. They just have read access to. And I can share with other individuals as well. Or what I can do is, once I share it with them, they'll get an email message that says that whoever it is, I've sharing this folder, Annual Reviews folder, and here is the URL for accessing it. So whoever you share with can then click on the URL from the email, and they can access that folder, whether it is on your personal endpoint or from your, for instance, on the NeSI endpoint in your No Backups directory, if you have a folder you want to share with people. Okay, the last point to make around sharing is that, as well as sharing with individuals, you can set up a group of users. So here's one I've already set up, a test group. You can create a new group of users and share files with a group rather than an individual. And the way you do that is by creating a new group. And you can then add people to that group. That's pretty much all I wanted to give you in the demo. In terms of getting help and support, you can at any time email NeSI support for any questions about helping set up a data transfer account or running your first transfer. As I mentioned right at the beginning, documentation's in our user support center, support.nesi.org. One very last thing to mention that you might want to consider, as well as working with New Zealand NeSI customers and collaborators on data transfer, we're looking to broaden some of those conversations to make wider use of Globus services, so not just file sharing, file transfer, but data automation, publication and searching. Some of these sites here use the Globus APIs to do workflows, create portals, science gateways, and so on. So there's potential for broader use of the Globus platform as a service. And that's my demo. Questions?
Thank you, Brian. I have one question here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am. And let me just undo it here. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Minnie from the Women's and Children's Health Department at the University of Otago. I have a doubt about sharing files. Now, to be able to share files between two personal computers, say, should we subscribe?
If you want to share files between two personal computers via having set up Globus personal endpoints, you need to have the Globus Plus subscription that I mentioned. So you can't do it without that subscription, even though you have set up personal endpoints. With a personal endpoint, you can, without the Globus Plus subscription, you can transfer from a managed node, like from the NeSI node or from the Otago node to your personal endpoint, but you can't transfer between endpoints.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if one endpoint is the University of Otago, the server, so then we don't need subscription. We can still share files.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Now, if I just go back and have a look at the any of the questions here. There was a note that I just missed about, just having a look if there's anything here that's worth picking up on. Jana, did you, yeah, okay. One that I might just pick up on then from the list of questions is around automating the transfers. Yes, you can do that with scripting of that automation using, as I mentioned, the Python SDK. You're welcome to contact NeSI support staff about how about how to create those scripts and the level of support that we can provide in that process, or with the Globus support as well. There's a question there about changing the default directory. I'm not sure on the answer to that one. I don't know if I can pass that over. I think Anita might be typing in an answer to that one.
Brian, one thing that I thought might be useful is we actually have a really active Globus user on the call, Johnny Williams, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know he loves the service, and I think it's been of great benefit to his research, so I didn't know if he wouldn't mind saying a word or two about the impact that it's had and usefulness that he's found.
Yes, by all means, Johnny, if you do have any comments to make about the service, please fire away.
Oh, he may disconnect. He was on the call earlier. He did offer to be a resource for anyone who has questions. Oh, he's back. I don't know, Johnny, are you able to unmute? Or did you hear what we were requesting of you? Oh, there.
Yeah, Johnny, we were just asking whether you, as a regular Globus transfer service user, whether you had any comments around the service. Maybe he wants to remain a silent participator at this point.
He says in the chat he's unmuted, but it doesn't seem to be working.
Okay.
Well, if anyone else on the call has been using the service, if they want to.
Hi, this is Vidya. I'm sharing office with Johnny. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Vidya.
Okay, then I'll hand over the mic to Johnny.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Johnny.
Hi. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with, I could hear you perfectly, but for some reason couldn't hear me. But yeah, so yeah, thanks for the presentation. I mean, I've been a user for quite a while now of Globus, and because we collaborate with our climate modeling colleagues in Korea and in the UK. And so we frequently share very large amounts of data, like hundreds of gigabytes. And yeah, we've consistently found the service to be very reliable, very fast. Also, setting up the personal endpoint, I found was very straightforward. So, I mean, I don't really have a huge amount more to add than that, really. I mean, apart from just to just say that we've enjoyed using it. It's been very reliable, and that I'd recommend it. Really, it's not a lot more to say than that, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. As a fairly recent addition to the NeSI team, I found using the transfer service and setting up the endpoint, my personal endpoint myself, was pretty pain-free, really. Did it in the space of a few minutes and was instantly transferring files. So yeah.
It's also, sorry, I just thought as just another thing, I have also, as well as the web app, I have used the command line interface quite extensively as well. For example, for using what's called a batch transfer, where you want to specify precisely what files, rather than just, for example, transferring a directory, you might want to transfer individual files within certain directories. And you can just set that up as a list in a text file and use what's called a batch transfer at the command line. And yeah, the syntax behind that I found a little bit confusing at the very beginning, but it's one of those things that once you've done it a couple of times, it's, you know, you just get used to it. Yeah, I definitely recommend the service very much. And if anyone's, obviously NeSI support is going to be probably a more useful route for many people, but I'm happy to be contacted if anyone's got any specific questions.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, there's a valuable functionality that command line, and NeSI support staff are able to assist with anyone who wanted to be using that service.
I mean, as an example of using that command line one, because one solution that we had to do was basically to set up a regular syncing of a particular very large directory on a remote system in Europe. So, you know, we didn't want to have to transfer, you know, several terabytes regularly. So we're just able to identify the bits of the repository which had changed and just transfer those using that batch transfer that I was just talking about. Right. And that's something which Globus has made very, very easy.
Right. Okay. Have you scripted any of the APIs around with Python? I know that Cameron at Otago was interested in managing the transfer of exporting from a local service through to PAC, through to Globus to colleagues elsewhere, and to automate that process with the data coming off PAC to via Globus.
No, I haven't done that. No. I have worked with my colleague Stuart Moore here at NeSI and we've put together a simple short script which does the automation of the processing that I was just discussing, but that's not a Python script. It's a fairly simple kind of bash script to construct the batch transfer request file.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, you're welcome to continue to add any questions into the Google Doc, or to contact the NeSI support with any questions directly. I suppose to wrap it up, the one thing that I would, the idea I'd like you to take away is that what we're not promoting today is the relaunch of the NeSI node, if we want to call it, the endpoint down at moved down to NeSI. But what we're promoting is really a national data transfer platform for the country that uses partners in Globus and REANS, but is a national platform rather than just one or two nodes or endpoints. And the more the more we can grow that platform, the more endpoints, managed endpoints institutions that we can grow, I think the stronger that national platform will be. Well, I think there's one last question that hasn't been addressed. Are there any gotchas between two endpoints that are both on different private address spaces, thinking of NAT? I don't have the answer to that one. I'm not sure if, Jose, if you're still there, if you're able to answer that one. Jose may...
Sorry, I was muted. I was looking at that one. I was looking at the questions.
Yeah, it's gotchas between two endpoints that are both on different private address spaces, thinking of NAT.
Okay, so if using the Globus personal and client, which will be basically one connection, if both can basically reach each other, it should be fine. It should be working fine. Behind the NAT, there might be some additional configuration needed in the port translation. So depending on how this is done on the NAT server, which usually can be firewalls, can be a home router. You might need to configure additional port redirection for that to work. Usually, you don't have to do any of this. It will get created and assigned automatically.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jose. And on that note, I think we will finish the, it looks like a lot of people are about to leave anyway, so we'll finish the webinar. And again, I stress any questions you have, come and talk to us about them, about using the service and about building the National Data Transfer Platform. Thank you.